After 28 years of fixing their problem without credit, my boss said, "You're too old to learn new software." She gave my job to a 25-year-old who asked if she could work from home on her first day. I smiled, shook her hand and left quietly. 5 days later she got it. She had barely finished her onboarding slideshow when she pulled out her phone and struck a pose, duck lips, peace sign, one leg propped on the armrest like it was a yoga mat. I stood just beyond the frosted glass wall watching her frame up the perfect self in a chair I'd sat in every day for the last 28 years. My name is Thomas Rhines. I'm 57 years old, or was back, when all this started. Until last week, I was Senior Systems Analyst at Seller X Technologies, a mid-sized logistics firm that most people have never heard of unless something in their supply chain broke. I didn't wear branded hoodie or film coffee walks for the company newsletter. I fixed things quietly, permanently, without applause. My corner of the office used to with machines I built from scratch. No frills were horses that had kept Seller X alive through a dozen market crashes and 3 COs. Now there was Cassidy swirling in a spin chair like she'd won a prize. "Can you take a quick photo of me with my monitor?" She asked the intern who had escorted her up. "Just tag me in the story, first day, vibes." I stood there for another second before turning away. My nameplate was still on her desk. The meeting had been 2 days earlier. Michelle scheduled it under the subject line Future Alignment Chat, 10 minutes, that's all it took to erase nearly 3 decades. Michelle is the kind of leader who reads productivity books on flights and dog-ears the pages with phrases like agility first and skill inertia, late 30s, always impeccable. Her office smells like citrus oil, diffuses and scented certainty. I sat down without saying much. She looked up from her laptop and smiled. "She just remembered my birthday, Tom." She began voice smooth rehearse. "Thanks for making the time today." "I always do." She laughed politely, glanced at her screen as if she had to remind herself why I was there. "So, as we look ahead to our Q3 priorities, we're doing a bit of strategic repositioning, especially with our develops team." I nodded slowly. "What kind of repositioning?" She paused like the line she was about to deliver had been practiced in front of a mirror. "We need to modernize our workflows, bring in voices that reflect where we're going, not just where we've been there." It was coded language. "We are incredibly grateful for your dedication." Frankly, she folded her hands neatly. "You've been with the legacy system so long. It's not realistic to expect full fluency in the new platforms and, honestly, we feel the transition would be smoother." Someone knew her. I blinked once. "You're saying I'm too old to learn new software?" She opened her mouth, closed it, then nodded faintly. "I'm saying it's not the best investment for the company right now. I thought about the weekend I spent rewriting our entire back-end protocol after a ransomware breach shut us down 40 hours straight. No sleep, no complaint. I thought about the time our shipping matrix failed during a merger. I built a parallel load balancer out of old machines in the break room. I thought about how many weekends I'd missed, birthdays, my daughter's graduation, all because only Tom knows how to fix it." Michelle slid an envelope across the table. "We're offering a generous severance, 3-month salary, healthcare through the end of the quarter, and if you'd like a letter, I don't need a letter." She tilted her head waiting for a response, a reaction, anger, sadness, anything. Instead, I just stood up, buttoned my blazer and said good luck with the new systems. The look on her face was not quite disappointment, but something close to it. Cassidy's first words to me were, "I hope we'll get along." She didn't mean it cruelly, she just didn't realize the weight of what she was stepping into. She wore platform sneakers and a glittery phone case. She asked if she could work from home today. I asked. She blinked. Isn't that normal here now?" "Not really," I said, "but it might be soon." I shook her hand, passed her the badge still clipped to my belt, and left my login credentials on a post-it ducked to the monitor. No one followed me out, no one looked up. The elevator doors were slow. That day, like the building itself, couldn't quite believe what was happening. As I descended floor by floor, watching the reflected city slide past in the mirrored wall, I felt nothing, not rage, not sorrow, just a kind of stillness I hadn't felt in years. They didn't fire me because I couldn't keep up. They fired me because I never needed to show off to prove I could. They just replaced substance with sparkle. I didn't say goodbye, I didn't clear my desk. I didn't need to. They'll find out soon enough. The morning after I left Calorex, I didn't set an alarm. I didn't check my phone. I didn't even glance at the laptop, still sitting on the kitchen counter, its charger coiled neatly like a lifeline. I'd already cut. I just brewed coffee the slow way. French press, no notifications, no Teams pings, no one demanding something. Yesterday, just steam rising in the quiet felt unnatural at first, like my body expected a crisis to surface out of nowhere, password reset request or a data spike alert. At 3 a.m., nothing needed me anymore. That was supposed to sting, didn't around 9:0:0:0:12:0. The first text came in. What happened? No name, just the message. A minute later, another one. Cassidy, asked me what a batch file was. Thought she was joking. I didn't respond. I just sipped the coffee and stared out the window like it owed me something. By noon there were 5 more messages, people I hadn't heard from in months, some from inside the company, some who had been quietly dismissed. One who had taken an early retirement offer last spring. You're really gone. Michelle's acting like it was mutual. She told the team you didn't want to transition to new systems. I let the screen go dark. My name was already gone from the internal directory. Checked once, curiosity winning out for a second. No forwarding address, no contact card, just wiped like a patch update. I didn't rage, didn't post. I opened a notebook, drew a line down the center on the left, I started a list of names, people who'd left, people who had been pushed for, who, like me, had been replaced by someone louder, cheaper, younger. On the right side I started marking what they built, the systems, protocols, recovery plans. That list got long, fast at 2:00, grabbed my jacket and drove to the north end of town. There's a little sandwich shop tucked behind a used office supply store, best pastrami within 50 miles and exactly the kind of place Paul would choose. Paul was our former database architect, left last year under what Michelle called strategic divergence. We all knew what it meant. He was too methodical, too slow to embrace buzzwords, also too good at his job to be replaced by just one person. When I walked in he was already there, same hoodie, same tired eyes. He didn't say hello, just nodded toward the empty seat and said, I figured it was coming. We ordered sandwiches, astronomy for both. He didn't ask what happened. He already knew. Cassidy is in your seat now, right? He said, unwrapping his lunch. I nodded. She posted an Instagram story about day 1, energy, next to a screenshot of a permissions error. Someone forwarded it to me. I didn't laugh, but I felt my lip twitch. She's not the problem, I said, Michelle is. He looked up sharply. You figured it out too. She told me I was too old to learn new systems, called me tech debt. Paul actually stopped chewing. She said that to your face, not in those words, close enough. He shook his head. They've been doing it for months. I know of at least 6 others, all senior, all legacy. Most of them didn't get a reason, just some vague culture nonsense and a severance offer, not layoffs, not even listed that way. They're calling them rotational exits. I stared at my sandwich, suddenly not hungry. Paul reached into his backpack and pulled out a folded piece of paper. You should see this. It was a printout. The header read, Future Forward, Agile Culture 2025. Underneath were bullet points that read like they had been written by someone who thought Slack channels counted as deliverable. Reduce tech debt by removing legacy staff. Prioritize cultural fluidity over institutional memory. Streamline communication by flattening outdated hierarchies. I read it twice slowly, tech debt. I said aloud. We were the tech. Paul smirk. Now you see why I left. By the time I got home, I had a message waiting from an old sissied man named Riley, used to work in the network cage. Quiet guy, moved to Arizona after his transition. Check your email subject line, welcome. I opened it. One link, a Discord invite, legacy code, 41 members online. I clicked inside were names I hadn't seen in years, Dan from QA, Monica from Billing Systems, Hector the VPN wizard, all gone from Seller X, all with the same story, no one was ranting, no one was crying. They were cataloging, documenting, connecting dots. There were timelines, threads, even log files. The system hadn't failed. It had never been stable to begin with, we'd just been holding it up for too long. Now that we were gone was finally showing its cracks. I didn't plan to do anything, not at first. Silence only lasts so long where all the ghosts live. 3 days after that sandwich with Paul, I was still getting messages, most of them from people still inside, not full sentences, just breadcrumb whispers. Cassidy is panicking, Michelle's calling it a phase in migration, scheduled Friday, but nobody's seen the staging logs. I didn't reply. I just read and remembered. Internal deck. Paul had shown me the one with reduced tech debt by removing legacy staff. I scanned it into a burner account, removed names, tone. The arrogance came through loud and clear without needing a signature. I opened a blank email, addressed it to someone I hadn't spoken to in 7 years. Elliot Tran, journalist, used to cover data breaches and infrastructure scandals for a niche tech watchdog site. Smart, cynical, allergic to bullshit. We'd crossed paths once when he was digging into a botched encryption rollout. I gave him off-record context. He never burned me. I typed one sentence, might want to ask seller X why their modernization playbook reads like a purge manual. Attached the PDF send, logged out. Then I went for a walk, no destination, just motion. The next morning, 2 of our third-party vendors, companies I'd personally onboarded, emailed me directly. Hey, Tom, just heard they really let you go. One of them, an encryption firm we'd worked with since 2011, had quietly paused a new integration with seller X. Respectfully, we'd prefer to wait until their new team stabilizes. I didn't ask for that, I didn't suggest anything. I just answered a few questions, told a few truths. Meanwhile, Cassidy was discovering the difference between enthusiasm and understanding. She posted a TikTok that afternoon. Blonde waves, ring light caption. Day 4 at my new tech job and I don't understand anything in this dinosaur code. She turned the camera to her screen for half a second, just long enough. Someone in the comments recognized the UI. Yo, is that seller X's ops panel? Is she mocking their code base on video? She just leaked an internal dashboard. It snowballed from there. By midnight the clip had 60,000 views. A duet chain started with IT professionals mock reacting. The code behind her wasn't ancient, it was customized, it was deep. It worked until now. I didn't like the video, didn't comment, didn't message, took screenshots, saved them to a folder labeled Windfall. By Thursday I was hearing things again. Michelle had reportedly said Cassidy was the future of the platform, had given her green light to push forward with a modernization sprint, no audits, no backup staging, just a one-click migration into new software. She barely understood. Friday 10:41 a.m., I got a message from Riley in the legacy code group, crash, full outage, admin console locked, data corruption confirmed. I checked the seller X status page. It was red, every service node, every environment read. Someone sent me a screen capture from their internal Slack, Michelle's post team. We are addressing a brief infrastructure hiccup. Appreciate your patience during this transitional phase, a week's worth of data corrupted. I closed my laptop, grabbed my keys and drove to the hardware store. There's something about the smell of metal and dust, aisles of raw potential, nuts and bolts that actually fit where they're supposed to go. I wandered between server racks and heat-resistant cabling like a man revisiting his childhood home. No one knew me there. No one asked what I needed, and I didn't need anything. I just needed to walk somewhere. Cassidy couldn't post the selfish. I passed a shelf full of soda drives and smiled. They didn't just cut the engine, they handed the keys to someone who didn't know what the clutch was. By Monday the video had hit 200,000 views. Then it got re-uploaded to LinkedIn suddenly. It wasn't funny, it was negligence. An XT2 I used to brief on monthly reports shared it with the caption, "This is what happens when you fire, competence for vibes." I didn't comment, I didn't res hair, I didn't need to. They'd started a fire trying to light a spotlight. Now they were choking on the smoke. The call came on a Wednesday morning. No caller ID, just a number I hadn't seen in years. I let it ring twice before answering Tom. Her voice was polished but tight, trying to sound in control, but laced with something unfamiliar. "Michelle," I said. She exhaled like she hadn't been sure I'd pick up. "I hope this isn't a bad time." "Fine," I said, though I was already halfway through my second coffee and reading patch notes for a Linux distro I hadn't touched in a decade, just to see if I still could. "I wanted to reach out personally," she said, tone soft, like we were old colleagues catching up over lunch, instead of her calling the guy she'd fired for being too outdated. "We're in the middle of some temporary challenges." I waited, "We were wondering," she continued, "if you'd consider consulting short-term just to help recover some of the infrastructure." "Your expertise would be no," I said gently. She paused. "Tom, this isn't about ego." "It never was." I replied. Silence stretched. "We'd compensate you generously," she added, but it came out smaller than I think she meant it to. "I'm sure you would," I said, "but I'm not available." Another pause, longer this time. She said finally, "If you reconsider, I won't." No anger, no gloating, just a clean end. Later that day the message came through legacy code: Cassidy has been suspended. Internal audit triggered. HR and legal are reviewing 2 formal age bias complaints. I didn't ask from who, I didn't need to. They had handed the wheel to someone who couldn't drive, blamed the car, and now we're pretending the road was the problem. That afternoon I got coffee with someone I never expected to hear from again. Mark is Hale, now CTO at Radiant Access. Back when he was 22, I'd mentored him during a non-profit boot camp. He was bright, cocky, and fast on the keyboard, but slower with context. I taught him how to read between the logs. Now he wore pressed shirts and used words like vision scaffolding, but under the layers he was still him. I've been watching what's happening, he said, sipping something with oat milk and 2 espresso shots. You kept your head while everything else fell over. I shrugged, I just stayed out of the way. He smiled, no, you stayed grounded, big difference. That's why I'm here. He slid a folder across the table. Inside proposal, part-time leadership, flexible terms, no politics, just modernization with intent. We don't need flash, he said. We need foundation, real systems, thinking, quiet strength. I nodded. One condition, name it, I bring 3 with me. He didn't flinch. People from Seller X, people they discarded. He said, that's exactly who we want. 2 weeks later we were working, no LinkedIn announcements, no ring lights, no hashtags, just 6-hour working blocks in a clean co-working space, good Wi-Fi and even better silence. I brought in Monica from Billing Systems, Dan from QA, Hector, who could rewrite subnet architecture from memory. None of us needed to be seen. We just wanted to build. Meanwhile, Lynn Vale Systems. That's what they were calling it now. Apparently, the RE brand had been planned before the collapse. Was busy trying to mop up its own mess. An internal vendor leak reached Tech Brief. We've paused our engagement due to destabilized infrastructure following recent internal reshuffles. The piece didn't name Michelle directly, but it didn't have to. Quiet wave rippled through industry Slack threads, CTOs whispering, mid-level engineers reading between the lines. No one made noise. They were watching. I didn't post, didn't comment, just smiled. Relevance isn't something you brand. You don't trend it into existence with mood boards and mission decks. You earn it by doing the work quietly, consistently. You build relevance. The same way you build a stable system brick by brick, connection by connection, until it holds, even when no one's looking. That's what we were doing. Now let them worry about perception. We were building what lasts. I walked past my new office without stepping in. The door was open, sunlight spilling across the hardwood floor, no mission statements on the wall, no buzzwords taped to glass, just a quiet room with a standing desk, a whiteboard half filled with real diagrams and a pot of coffee sitting on a warmer in the corner. Someone had already refilled it. The hallway was still, but not dead. You could feel the current moving beneath the quiet, the steady rhythm of people working with purpose, not posturing for visibility. Marcus had kept his promise, no ceremonies, no welcome posts, no fake enthusiasm, just a smart, tight team doing smart, tight work. Monica was halfway through re-engineering. The billing queue. Logic had stood up. A routing backbone that cut our latency by 40%. Dan, grumbling like he always did, was rebuilding our QA framework from the ground up. None of it was flashy, none of it needed to be. My office door had no title, just my name. That's all I asked for. I was headed to the conference room when my phone buzzed. LinkedIn, Cassidy is profile gone. Not renamed, not rebranded, just vanished, deactivated without a ripple. Michelle's title now read, former executive at Lynn Vale Systems. I clicked out of reflex. Her last post, something about elevating digital synergy, was still up. Comments were quiet, few likes. One reply. I recognized hope. The next place values results over optics. I scrolled lower. Another reply from someone inside legacy code. Funny how the video disappeared. Green shots don't. Apparently someone inside legal had forwarded Cassidy's TikTok to the compliance department. HR had opened a file and then, like dominoes, the exits began. Senior staff, quiet resignations, no memos, no public reasoning, just LinkedIn updates and disappearing Slack profiles. Michelle was the first to go, but not the last. I slid the phone into my pocket and kept walking. That week I attended the Mid-State Engineering Conference. I hadn't planned on speaking, I was just there to listen. But during a coffee break one of the moderators recognized me, asked if I'd be willing to fill in on the modernization panel. I hesitated, then said the panel was titled Responsible Modernization in Legacy Systems. They handed me a mic. I didn't bring slides. I talked about what happens when you build systems that outlast people, about why boring tech is often the strongest tech. About why flash is fleeting but foundations hold when everything else fails. I didn't name names, I didn't need to. The room was full of people who'd lived through it, quiet workers who had been discarded in favor of consultants, buzzword bingo boards, engineers who had watched whole teams collapse because someone thought agile meant impulsive. When I finished, the room went still. Then the applause came, not loud, not polite, just solid. That's when I saw her, Michelle, standing near the exit, no entourage, no badge lanyard, just watching from the edge of the room. When our eyes met, she turned and walked away. I didn't follow. That night, back at the office, I onboarded 3 new engineers, all over 40, all brilliant, all overlooked. The first had been cut during a merger, placed with a culture fit who hadn't lasted 6 months. The second had stepped away from tech after being told he wasn't flexible enough for evolving digital paradigms. The third was a personal recommendation from Monica. Used to run infrastructure for a regional bank until they replaced him with a guy who didn't know the difference between a load balancer and a lunch tray. No TikTok videos, no welcome posts, just firm handshakes, quiet coffee and clean commits. By Friday, our new interface was already outperforming what I'd built at Seller X, in both speed and stability. It wasn't flashy, wasn't pretty, but it worked elegantly, silently. They'd wanted a story that looked good on Instagram. I was building systems meant to last 20 years. Following week, Marcus popped his head into my office, "Not once I owe you lunch." He said, "What for vendor called?" He replied. Said onboarding was the smoothest they've ever had. Asked who built our protocol, I smiled, Dan did. Monica. Structured the logic layer. You didn't touch it. I cleared the runway. They did the flight. He nodded, well, we just got greenlit for phase 2. After he left, I checked the deployment tracker. Everything was green. No scrambling, no panic, no crisis response, just a system running. They thought relevance came from being seen. Turns out, real relevance comes from what keeps running after you're gone.